Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we got something special going on. We actually have my buddy Burke from Road Odyssey, and Burke brought his C5 Corvette that he purchased recently back, and it does need a little bit of maintenance, and so we're going to try to do probably shocks, an oil change, and a few other walk-around things, different stuff with it. He's going to leave the car with me for a couple of days, and I'm going to go through it and kind of fix what I can fix and look at things that might need to be fixed. So. Anything you want to say, Burke?
It's a 2000. It's 20 years old. It's been used and abused. It's got a salvage title, so we know it's had damage to it. So there's as you said earlier, there are some gremlins alive and probably spawning throughout this car somehow. So we'll see how it goes.
Right. We're going to see if we can track down those gremlins and get as many of them out as we can. And the beauty of this car is we can do stuff with it that might be a lot more beneficial to some of the other users out there, whether you have a Corvette or some other type of a vehicle that might need a little bit of help on different things. And so we'll see what we can track down and see if we can exercise some of these demons.
And have a lot of fun doing it.
Exactly. All right, folks. Well, thanks for tuning in, and hope you enjoy this video. It should be a lot of fun.
Thank you all.
Like Burke and I were saying before, one of the tasks for today is to replace the shock absorbers. Front shock, rear shock. Really similar. They have the shock, the valve body inside of it that makes the shock absorber take up the shock that it's intended to absorb. This is the front shock. There's two bolts here. It bolts down to the lower control arm, and this shaft here goes up into the body, and it does its job on there. The rear shock absorber has these two bolts. It bolts up in, and then the fork on the bottom side, a bolt goes through that. But basically, they're the same thing. They're just configured a little bit differently so that they work on the vehicle the way they need to. I do want to take a quick second and explain shock absorbers for folks that may not know what they are or what they do. As the name indicates, they take out the shock. But for an example, if you've ever been driving down the highway and you see another vehicle around you, and the front end of that vehicle is just really like floating. Every time it goes over a bump, it never comes to a resting point. It just keeps floating. That means that either the shock absorbers are completely worn out or non-existent. I have seen cars just not have shock absorbers replaced on them. That somebody took them off, or they broke, or whatever happened. They just took it off, figured they didn't need it. Shock absorbers not only are important for comfort, but they're also important for safety. Because without the shock absorbers, when you hit a bump, your front end kind of starts floating. It can start moving side to side. It can do all kinds of weird things. You can lose control and either run into another vehicle, run into a ditch, a pole, whatever. People can be hurt or killed because of bad shock absorbers. So make sure that they're part of your maintenance. Make sure that you know what to look for. When we pull this one out on the passenger side, I know that it's leaking. We'll take a look at it, kind of show you what's going on, and show you why they need to be replaced. So let's go ahead and get to work.
I went ahead and put the car up on the quick jacks and pulled the passenger front wheel off. And this is exactly why we were changing out the shocks, because this one, I don't know if you can see right up in here, there's a little bit of the oil that's up on the actual boot. Now as you dip back down further along the shock itself, you can see all that oil. And then, see if I can reach around and get into here, but right in here is a bunch of oil, and down by the lower ball joint, or not the ball joint, but down where the spring arm connects to the front suspension, it is covered in oil down there too. And so basically what happens is the seal that's up here in the shock, it goes through all of its cycles for life and everything else. That seal finally gave way and let all the oil come down out of there. So anyway, that's kind of one of those things that is part of maintenance. This has got 100 and, well, I didn't look at the mileage, but I think Burke said that it's roughly 150,000 miles, somewhere in that neighborhood. And so that's one of those things that happens, and they're going to have to be replaced. So what we're going to do is, I don't know if you can see back in this little spot here, that's the nut from the top of the shock. We're going to loosen that one up, try to grab a hold of the top piece up there somehow while we're doing that, But anyway, we'll get this loosened up, and then we'll come down here at the bottom, and I don't know if you see my finger in here or not, but right in here, there's one bolt there, and this bolt right here. That's the bottom of the shock. We'll pull those out and do our best to try to compress the shock if we can to get it out of there. I do kind of have a little bit of a trick to compress it and keep it compressed, and if need be, I'll show you that trick. But looking at how much oil is out of the shock, I don't think that we're going to be having to really put a lot of pressure on it to compress it, because I kind of think that it's going to just pretty much fall right back up where it needs to be to get it out of the way. Anyway, let's go ahead and grab the tools that we need, and we'll get started on that. It should be a pretty fun job. Okay, we're back. What I've done is I've got 15 millimeter wrench. I'm going to use a gear wrench, and here, let me see if I can change the angle so we kind of see what I'm doing, because it's kind of low. Anyway, that might be able to do. But I'm going to take it's a gear wrench, and so I'm going to put it up over the top of the shock stud. Anyway, you can't reverse the wrench because there's a flat spot on the top side of it that won't allow it. So let me see if I can get some more light up here somehow, just to basically see what I'm doing. As you can see on the top of, I don't know if you can see it or not, let me see. The top of the shock, where that comes through just above the wrench, this flat spot here, and so I've got a 6 millimeter wrench, and so I'm going to put the 6 millimeter wrench on those flats. When I pull the shock out, I'll show you what I'm talking about. Anyway, that holds the shaft right here. Let me back away. The shock shaft goes all the way through and is all kind of tied together. And so when you try to unloosen that nut, the whole thing will spin. And so putting this wrench on those flats will kind of hold that still while you're loosening the nut up. So anyway, that's what I'm trying to do. Hopefully you can see and understand what I'm talking about. And I'm getting ready to find out if it actually works or not. So anyway, let me set the camera back down. I'm going to try to turn the angle so we can kind of see at least where my hands are at. You're not going to probably see, well, I know you won't see exactly what I'm doing, but put this light back over here. That's not too bad, we can kind of see. But I might have to get a little bit of leverage on that little wrench there to hold it in place, because there it goes. That nut didn't want to let go. Let me see if I can spin that a little bit. And there we go. You probably still need something with a little bit more leverage on that little wrench. Well, that certainly made a lot of difference on it, that's for sure. They make a shock tool for this, but there's really not a whole lot of room to access the top side with that shock tool. So we're going to use what we got. Kind of the whole point behind my channel anyway is using average shop tools that are accessible to most everybody. I think I'm going to go ahead and put a jack underneath that bottom of the suspension here real quick, just to give it a little bit of support. Might get a little bit of weight off the top side of that shock and make it a little bit easier to get this whole thing out. So, alright, so I went ahead and put the jack underneath the bottom of the suspension, and to get a little bit more leverage, went ahead and put a locking, these are actually vice grips, locking pliers on the end of the wrench, make it a little bit longer, give me a little bit more leverage to be able to get this thing to turn, and that makes a world of difference there. So I think it's about the end of the run for that. So what I think I'm going to have to do is probably put vice grips on the bottom side of this shaft now to hold on to that while I finish loosening it all the way up. Now the question is, do I have enough room to get it in there? Now, understand the shock is already bad, so that's not going to make any difference if we booger that up a little bit. So we got that suspension compressed a little bit more again. There's just not enough clearance really to get that in there. Alright, it is loose. Pull the vice grips out of the way. Drop the suspension down just a little bit. And we should be able to pull those out of there. And great, drop that big old washer in there. Alright, that's the big old washer that was on the top side. That basically clamps down on the rubber bushings that are in here. So now we'll go ahead and knock the bottom bolts down there loose and get this shock out of here. Okay. I've gone ahead and put a little bit more pressure back on there. I'm not going to pull the wheel cylinder, the speed sensors, because I don't think we need to. They're not really in the way. So what I've got is a 13mm deep well for this side. It goes on there. And got an extension and a ratchet. This on the other side. Now, I do have impact tools that I could use, but there's really no need to it. Just a little bit of elbow grease on some of the stuff to get it pulled apart. Okay. For the zip tie method, we got a couple of regular zip ties, and then you can use
several regular zip ties, but I have some of these heavy duty, let me see if I can show you the label. They're the super long zip ties, and what these are used for is attic duct work, the big hoses and stuff to do a lot of the connections. And so because they have those available at like any of your big box home improvement stores, having some of those around the garage is never a bad idea. So anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this zip tie and put it around the top of the shock up here. And then I'm hoping this will work. Probably should do it actually up a little bit higher. Put it around the top of the shock. But what I want to do, leave it a little bit loose, and then drop one of these zip ties, the big zip tie, down through there, and tighten it up. Get a bit more out of it and hopefully not break it. These, not always the greatest. And how long that is, it looks like I'm going to need a second one of those zip ties, which is not a problem because I've got several of them. So, making sure I don't have any hoses and stuff in the way, I'm going to take that zip tie and run it down through, drop it underneath the shock, and bring it back up. And again, I've got this other stuff here. That might be a problem. I might have that zip tie might be just too long, but it'll work. Just to be on the safe side, I think I'm going to take and run at least one more of the regular zip ties around it. Pop it through. Like so. Tighten it up. Shove it up a little bit further if I can. Get it up underneath the over the edge of that shock. Tighten it up. Okay. Now when I let off the jack, it should keep the shock somewhat compressed. And I should be able to get it the rest of the way out. I'm going to be careful though. Yep, it's holding it together, but take a little bit more pressure, and a little more pressure there. There we go. Now, let's get these bolts the rest of the way out. Okay, so I went ahead and dropped the jack down out of the way. I got these bolts out, and so now it's a matter of dropping the shock out and getting it all the way out. But like I was saying, these shocks don't have a whole lot of life left in them, and so lifting it up like that, I can probably get the whole thing out. All right. There it is, one dead shock. All right, let me go ahead and actually I'm going to do a little bit of cleaning up underneath here, just because there's this oil and everything else that's all over it. And once I do that, then we'll go ahead and
put this thing back together. All right, so we got the old shock mount, the old shock absorber out. We've got it all kind of wiped down, cleaned up the best we could, and I went ahead and used the same trick and compressed the shock so that we can get it in place. And then once we're ready to let it loose, we'll cut the tie straps and let the shock absorber go up into place and kind of seat itself. So let's go ahead and feed it up through the control arms. And it does not want to be a team player here. Now there we go. All right, so what we're going to do now is drop these lower bolts down in place. We're not going to tighten them all the way up. We're just going to get them in place and ready to go. All right. Start that one. Start that one. All right, I got to take a break for a battery change. GoPro is telling me that the battery is about dead. So, be right back. All right, we're back. We changed the battery out. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put the nuts on the bottom side of these bolts just to hold them in place. We're not going to put them down real tight yet. We just want to, like I said, just get them in place so that we can not have to worry about it. We'll tighten them up later once we get this whole thing in place. All right. And all I did was just kind of quickly snug them into place, and we should be about ready to go. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pause. I got to go grab a pair of side cutters so that I can cut these top zip ties out of the way and hold on while this thing does what it does, because you got to be pretty quick with it. It'll kind of get up in there out of the way because the shock is rebounding. So be right back. All right, so be quick with this. Ready, set, go. And right back up into the hole it went. Just like that. That's pretty cool. Pull that one out of there. That one out of there. And it is set back up in there. Pretty cool, pretty crazy. I think I'm going to pop that loose. I think we want it all on the back side anyway. There we go. Once that shock comes up, yep. We'll see how that the wheel speed sensor right here is what I'm worried about being in the way of the shock movement. But once it goes back up, it'll kind of go back the other way, I think. So we'll see. All right. So what we want to do now is get this other rubber piece up here, put it on, and that shock will go into place a little bit tighter than what it is. Now, that one washer that we dropped on the way out, that's right there, it's back in place. And then the top nut up here. So All right. Let's get this thing, hopefully this thing doesn't turn on us and actually just does what it needs to do. Okay, what I've gone to is, because of the way the bolt is on top, went to just for right now, 2 wrenches. Using still the 16, or the 6mm wrench on the flat sides of the top of the shock. And then I've got a regular 15mm wrench on the bottom. But I am getting ready to go back to the gear wrench because I've got enough room now that I think I can get to it all and get this thing cinched down. Yeah, absolutely. Alright, we'll do that, and like we did earlier, we will use the vice grip to hold that wrench for leverage. Pull it out of the way. We're going to tighten up the bottom half. Get this stuff all locked down. And I'm still not done on top. I just want to get everything else locked in place. Get the other one because I want to get a little bit more. Yep. Those are done. Top is done. Do one more little bit on this top part. I think there we go. And that is that. We got up here where you can see it. Got that upper part put back together, all tightened down nice and snug. And then see if we can see them down here in the bottom where those bolts are. There's still a little bit of oil and stuff down in there, but that's going to take probably a pressure washer to clean it off real good. But other than that, that is a C5 Corvette front shock. Move the microphone, maybe you can hear me a little bit better that way. All right, anyway. That is it. The shock, as I hit my leg with the camera pole. The top of it up there. Creating all the shadows I can. Try to make it as pleasant for all the viewers as possible. Top part. Cross over a little bit. And there's the bottom bolts down there at the bottom. They're all in and snug. And there we go. That is a shock. You know, really, probably one of the best things that I did was, okay. Anybody see what I'm seeing? That is a failed upper control arm bushing too. So those need to be replaced, and that explains, that might have been that piece of junk that I found down at the bottom. So anyway, that is a job for another day, but it is certainly a job. So that's one of the things that you kind of discover when you're dealing with a car. Like I said, this one, the previous ownership maintenance is really suspect. When Burke bought the vehicle, it was or it is a salvage title vehicle. So they bought it kind of as a project and kind of as a, work it as it goes. But as things are, honestly, that upper control arm bushing is not a real difficult thing. I would suspect that we'll probably go ahead and pull the whole thing apart. Although the lower control arm, they look pretty decent. They don't look like they're needing any maintenance. We'll check the other side, see what it looks like, and then we'll go from there. So anyway, there we have it.
All right, everyone. As you can see, we are done with the C5 shocks because we're back the other way. In full disclosure, I didn't do a proper outtake for the last one, and so, or an outro, not an outtake, for the last one. And so that's what I'm doing here. I just want to really explain what we did, which was replace both front shocks on the C5 Corvette. The passenger side is the one that we showed in the video. It was clearly in really bad shape. The seals were blown out of it because all the oil was leaking out. It was all over the place. It was a mess, which made actually a pretty good project video. So anyway, most importantly, be safe when you're doing stuff like this. If you don't have a quick jack, or if you don't have some type of a lift that you're using and you're doing it on jacks in the garage, make sure that you properly support the vehicle with jack stands or other safety devices to keep the thing from collapsing and falling down on you. I don't want to see anybody get hurt or killed, which happens every year. It's some of those things that people take shortcuts, and it's just going to be a minute. Well, in a split second, that minute can change lives. So please be safe. As always, I really appreciate everybody that has subscribed to the channel. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so. Hit that subscribe button. Smash the like button on the video if you like it, and by all means, please comment if you see something that you liked or something that you didn't like, maybe you would have done differently. Discussion is always a good thing. So the reason I do the things the way I do them is because that's how I know how to do them, and it is by no means the only way to do something. So again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on down the road. Not really a dab.